She froze when the radio hissed again. The voice on the other end sounded calm, almost rehearsed, coordinates, clearance. A green light wrapped in clipped syllables, but her stomach knotted the moment the message ended. Something was off, too clean, too perfect. Why was no one else hearing it? Around the table, the men leaned back in their chairs, relieved. One even smiled faintly, finally certain that the hours of waiting had ended. They believed the voice. They believed the chain of command. But her instincts, sharpened by years of training and scarred by memories she wished she could forget, whispered something darker. A trap. She didn't speak right away. Speaking up always carried weight, especially for her. The lone woman in this unit, tucked into the folds of a war that already tried to break her more than once. Every word she offered was measured, dissected, weighed for weakness. But silence had its cost too. The radio crackled again, a softer echo of the same command. Repetition, reassurance, lies. Her hand tightened around the edge of the steel table until her knuckles paled. They thought she was just tense, maybe overthinking, but she was. The details didn't match. The cadence of the voice, the rhythm of the numbers, the pause before the confirmation code. She had studied deception once, long before she wore the uniform, and this was someone pretending. She swallowed, forcing her throat to open. That's not him. The room stilled. Eyes turned. The kind of eyes that questioned first, trusted second. One soldier raised an eyebrow as if to ask, "And what makes you so sure?" Another leaned forward, a small grin playing at his lips, amused at the idea that she was calling out the voice of command. But she didn't flinch. "Listen again," she said softly, her voice steady. "He doesn't breathe between the numbers. He always breathes between the numbers." They stared at her. One of them scoffed. "You're saying we're being fed false orders from our own channel." She nodded once tight. "That's exactly what I'm saying." The silence that followed was heavy, like a storm pressing against windows. No one wanted to believe her. No one wanted the burden of what she implied, that someone had hijacked their comms, that the mission they were being pushed into was a setup. But doubt had been planted, whether they admitted it or not. She pushed back her chair and stood. Her legs trembled, though she forced them still. "We move on this, we don't come back, not all of us." There it was, her voice shaking the air, daring them to weigh her warning against their comfort in believing. For a moment she saw the faces soften. Even the amused grin faltered. Because underneath their training, underneath their armor, they were human, and humans feared dying for nothing. She left the room before they could answer. Outside, the wind carried dust across the compound. The horizon was bleeding orange, the sun slipping low, shadows stretching like restless fingers. She pulled her jacket tighter, but it wasn't the chill she fought, it was the memory clawing back. A different radio, a different lie. Her brother's voice, broken and small, crackling through her mind. That night she had begged command to double-check the intel, begged them to reconsider. They hadn't. They pushed forward, and her brother's convoy never came home. She closed her eyes. Instincts weren't hunches, they were scars. Footsteps approached, heavy, hesitant. It was Ramirez, the youngest in the unit, carrying more nervous energy than muscle. He scratched the back of his neck, avoiding her gaze. "You really think it's fake?" he asked quietly. She looked at him. His eyes reminded her of recruits fresh out of training, still holding on to belief, still convinced war was structured, predictable. She hated that. She hated knowing what would strip that belief away. "Yes," she said. He shifted his weight. "Then what do we do?" She almost smiled at the word we. She wasn't used to hearing it. Most days she was the outsider, the one with too much caution, too many objections. But now someone asked her. "We wait," she said. "We listen. Real orders will come, and when they do, they won't sound like this." He nodded, though uncertainty clung to his shoulders. He wanted to believe her. Maybe he did, but belief wasn't enough. The others would need proof. And proof meant risk. That night she didn't sleep. The barracks were alive with the sounds of men too stubborn to admit they were uneasy, snoring too loud, turning too often, muttering in restless dreams. She lay awake, counting the beats of her heart, replaying the voice in her mind. Every syllable, every pause, every silence that wasn't supposed to be there. At some point, she found herself standing outside again, boots sinking into cold dirt, the stars like needles pricking the black. She tilted her head, listening to the silence. And in that silence, her instincts spoke again. Something was moving, out there, beyond the fences. The next morning, briefing resumed. The same voice came over the radio, urging urgency, masking lies with authority. And again, the men leaned closer, hungry for direction. But this time, she didn't wait. "Give me 5 minutes," she said, stepping forward. "I'll prove it." The commander frowned. "And how exactly?" She drew a breath. This was the gamble. If it's him, he'll answer me. If it's not, he won't. Her heart hammered as she pressed the comm switch. The headset was heavier than it should have been, pressing against her skull, pressing her back into memory. She kept her voice steady. "Confirm the lullaby, sir." Silence. Her chest tightened, her palms dampened. She repeated it, softer this time, almost pleading. "Confirm the lullaby." And then the voice returned, but it was wrong, too quick, too vague. "Confirmed." Her throat closed. That wasn't it. The lullaby wasn't a word. It wasn't even a phrase. It was a sound, something their commander hummed once, absent-mindedly during downtime, adopted by the unit as a private joke, a memory woven into their trust. No one outside would know. She pulled the headset off and set it on the table with deliberate calm. "That's not him." The room was silent again, but different this time. Doubt wasn't abstract anymore. Doubt was undeniable. She looked at Ramirez. His face was pale, his jaw set. Fear, yes, but also resolve. The commander rubbed his temples, eyes narrowing as he weighed the consequences. Calling it a trap meant pulling back. Pulling back meant disobedience. And disobedience meant consequences. But survival meant listening to the woman, whose instincts were forged in loss. The decision hung in the air like the pause before a trigger pull. She didn't wait for approval. She stood, grabbed her rifle, and walked toward the exit. Her pulse thundered. If she was wrong, she'd answer for it. If she was right, she might have just saved them all. The wind met her outside again, colder now. She breathed it in, steadying herself. She had learned one truth long ago, a truth no radio could erase. Lies could be rehearsed, but instincts remembered. And hers were screaming louder than ever. Why hadn't anyone followed her out the door? That question clung to her as she crossed the compound, boots dragging trails through dust that curled like smoke in the wind. Behind her, the briefing room still hummed with hesitation. They wanted to believe her. They wanted her to be wrong, because if she wasn't, the weight of what she'd uncovered was heavier than any rifle they'd ever carried. She didn't look back, she never did. The night had bled into a pale, fragile dawn, sky painted with bruised pinks and muted golds. Birds stirred against the razor wire fence, their wings beating against air thick with tension. Somewhere in the distance, a generator coughed and rattled, coughing like an old man reluctant to wake. Every sound carried more meaning than it should have. She cataloged them one by one, marking them against her instincts, searching for the one that didn't belong. Her shadow stretched ahead of her, long and lean, broken by the uneven terrain. It reminded her of her brother's silhouette when they used to walk home together from school, his stride always longer, hers always hurried to catch up. The memory hit like a knife. She quickened her pace as if running from it. The barracks behind her erupted in muffled debate. Voices rose, collided, then fell again into uneasy murmurs. She couldn't hear the words, but she didn't need to. She knew the rhythm of fear. Ramirez's footsteps finally joined hers. Quicker, lighter, always a half step behind. He hadn't said anything yet, but the way he clutched his rifle betrayed his nerves. His face was tight, jaw locked, the kind of expression men wore when they wanted to hide the fact that they were still boys underneath. "You didn't wait," he said finally, his voice hushed. She shook her head. "Waiting gets you killed." They reached the edge of the compound. The gate loomed in front of them, a slab of steel painted dull by years of sand and sun. A guard leaned against the corner, yawning, his weapon hanging loose. He straightened when he saw them approach. "Orders changed?" he asked. Her throat tightened. She hated how easily a lie could slip past lips when framed by authority. She hated more how easily soldiers obeyed when it was wrapped in the right tone. "Yes," she said, "recon before movement." The guard blinked, processing, then nodded. No suspicion, no hesitation, just trust in a voice that carried certainty. She wondered how many lives had been lost because of that very thing. Once outside the wire, the world felt heavier. The silence wasn't silence at all. It was layered, alive. Wind sweeping low across dirt, the faint crack of wood from a distant hut, something shifting beneath sand where there shouldn't be movement. She slowed, scanning, every muscle strung taut like wire. "See something?" Ramirez whispered. She raised a hand, stilled. Her eyes fixed on a ridge to the east. Nothing obvious, just the faint shimmer of heat rising from stone, but it was wrong. The air wasn't hot enough yet for mirage. The shimmer was movement. "Snipers!" Her pulse hammered once, hard enough to shake her ribs. She forced her breathing even, grounding herself in the rhythm of inhale, exhale, control. "They're watching us," she murmured. Ramirez's head jerked up. "What? How do you?" She cut him off with a glance. He followed her eyes to the ridge, and when he saw the shimmer too, the blood drained from his face. He muttered a prayer under his breath. She almost envied him for it. Faith had a way of stitching holes fear tore open. She only had instinct, and instinct didn't comfort. It only warned. She crouched, pulling him down with her. They pressed against the earth, letting its roughness bite into their knees, grounding them further. She raised her rifle, sights settling, breath slowing. Her finger hovered, not trembling, just patient. Then confirmation, the faintest glint of glass catching sunlight, scope. Her chest tightened. "It's a kill box," she whispered. Ramirez cursed under his breath. She pulled back, her body moving before thought could catch up. "We go back." "But—" "No arguments, move." They ran low, darting between skeletal bushes and jagged stone. Each second stretched, thick with the possibility of a bullet splitting it. Every gust of wind felt like it carried death behind it. She didn't dare look back at the ridge. She didn't want to see how many eyes tracked them. When the compound walls rose back into view, relief struck her chest so hard it hurt. They slipped inside, breathless, dust caked on their skin. The others were waiting. The commander's face was carved from stone, unreadable. The men behind him looked restless, caught between duty and dread. "Well," the commander demanded. She didn't hesitate. "Ambush, ridge to the east, snipers, whole thing's a setup." The words hung in the room like smoke, heavy, suffocating. Silence followed, but it wasn't disbelief this time. It was realization. The kind of realization that dug deep, exposing how close they had come to walking into graves with their boots polished and rifles ready. One of the older soldiers, Thompson, with lines carved deep around his eyes from too many deployments, let out a slow, bitter laugh. "God damn, she's right." Her chest loosened, but only slightly. Convincing them was only step one. Survival was the rest. The commander rubbed his temples, sighing heavily. If the channels compromised, were blind. No orders, no updates, nothing. "Not blind," she corrected softly, "just alone." Her words seemed to sink deeper than she intended. She saw it in their faces, the quiet fear of isolation. Soldiers weren't built for aloneness. They were built for cohesion, for hierarchy, for orders that carried the illusion of control. Stripped of that, they were just men with guns and beating hearts, staring into chaos. Ramirez looked at her. There was fear in his eyes still, but something else too: respect. She turned away, hiding the flicker of warmth that sparked in her. Respect didn't matter. Survival did. Hours dragged like years. They fortified the compound, eyes fixed on the horizon, waiting for movement. The radio crackled again and again, the false voice growing sharper, more insistent, trying to prod them out like prey from a hole. They ignored it, but every crackle was a reminder. Whoever was out there knew exactly where they were. Night fell. The compound sank into uneasy quiet. Men took shifts on watch, their silhouettes sharp against the floodlights. Ramirez sat near her, restless, chewing on a strip of dried meat he barely swallowed. "You ever think about what comes after?" he asked suddenly. She blinked. After what? This, the war, the missions, the all of it. Her throat closed for a second. She had thought about it once, before, with her brother. Dreams of something quieter, maybe teaching, maybe running a bookstore, something small, something safe. But those dreams had burned the night she got the call about his convoy. Since then her life was just this: dust, silence, instinct, survival. "No," she said finally. "Thinking about after gets you killed in the now." He nodded, but his expression told her he didn't agree. He needed after. Maybe they all did. She envied him again, in a way. The night stretched on. Her body ached, her mind refused rest. Every sound clawed at her nerves, every gust of wind felt like warning. She longed for quiet, true quiet, not this counterfeit filled with teeth. And then it came. Not silence, movement. The ridge, shadows slipping against stone, too many to count. The ambush wasn't waiting anymore. It was coming. Her breath caught. She touched Ramirez's arm, firm. His eyes widened. He saw it too. "Get them up," she whispered. "Now." Why had she seen it first? That thought clawed through her mind as the shadows slipped across the ridge like oil stains spreading over stone. The floodlights from the compound were weak, fractured by distance, but her eyes caught what the others missed: the wrongness of the horizon. A ripple where there should have been stillness. Figures moving like whispers. Her throat dried, but her voice didn't waver. "They're coming." Ramirez stiffened beside her. His hand tightened on his rifle until his knuckles blanched. "How many?" She didn't answer. Counting them meant accepting them. Accepting them meant drowning in numbers that already told the story of odds too steep. Instead, she pushed the words out flat, stripped of panic. "Enough." Ramirez bolted to rouse the others. She stayed crouched near the wall, eyes locked on the ridge, forcing herself to memorize every shadow, every subtle change. Her heart wanted to sprint ahead of her body, wanted to give in to the primal urge to run. But instincts weren't about running. Instincts were about reading the storm before it broke. Boots scrambled across gravel behind her. The men spilled out, groggy but armed, forming lines that felt too thin. The commander appeared last, his face pinched by sleeplessness and something heavier: doubt. "Positions," he barked, voice louder than it needed to be, a cover for fear. They obeyed, scattering across the compound's perimeter, weapons braced, eyes searching. But she knew most of them couldn't see what she saw, not yet. The radio crackled again, same voice, same commands. This time it carried urgency sharp enough to cut through bone. "Move now. Secure the ridge before it's too late." She almost laughed. The irony was bitter enough to burn her throat. Too late was exactly what it would have been if they had obeyed. She leaned closer to the commander, keeping her voice low, private. "They're not warning us, they're pushing us, right into it." His jaw worked, muscles tight as cables. "And staying here, that buys us what? An extra hour before they come through the walls." Her eyes met his. For once he didn't look through her. He didn't look past her. He looked at her. "Sometimes an hour is the difference between a coffin and a sunrise," she said. The words hung there, not poetic in her own ears, but heavy enough to drag him into silence. The first shot cracked the air. Not theirs. A puff of dust leapt from the wall near Ramirez's shoulder. He flinched, ducked, swore under his breath. Snipers! The men ducked, scrambling behind crates and sandbags. She stayed low, scanning. The ridge was alive now, flashes of muzzle fire like fireflies in a storm. Shadows moved with purpose. They weren't probing. They were advancing. Her heart hammered so loud it drowned the sound of her own breathing. She forced the panic down, anchoring herself to the feel of the rifle against her palms, the cold metal pressing into her skin. A rifle didn't lie. A rifle didn't pretend. She drew in a breath, let it out slow, squeezed the trigger. The shot echoed, sharp, slicing the night. A figure on the ridge collapsed, rolling down the slope in silence. She didn't feel victory, only inevitability. One down didn't mean less danger. It just meant they knew she was watching. Ramirez fired next, his rounds less precise but desperate. The compound erupted in noise, rifles spitting fire, men shouting, the commander barking orders no one fully heard. Chaos had a rhythm and it was deafening. She tried to stay in it, tried to keep the calm that made her useful. But then her gaze caught on Thompson. The older soldier's face was tight, pale. His hand trembled on his weapon. For a second he looked less like a veteran and more like a man drowning in ghosts. She saw his lips move, forming words meant only for himself. Not again. Not again. She recognized it. The spiral, she knew it because she lived in it. Her chest tightened, and before she could stop herself, she shouted over the chaos, "Thompson, with me." His eyes snapped up, startled, but the command anchored him. He shifted, steadied, returned fire with her. His breathing calmed, not much, but enough. She didn't know why she'd done it. Maybe because saving one soldier from drowning in his own fear mattered as much as holding the wall. A mortar shell hit the dirt outside the compound. The ground shook, dust exploding into the air. Men cursed, ducked, braced. Ramirez's voice cut through, sharp and panicked. "They're trying to box us in." She knew he was right. The ridge wasn't the only front. The shadows were spreading, curling around the edges of their world like smoke. Whoever was running this knew the compound, knew their weak points, knew how to squeeze. Her instinct screamed again, louder, "Move or die where you stand." But where? The walls that once promised safety now felt like a trap. The radio, still spitting false orders, mocked them with every crackle. And the men, her men now, whether they liked it or not, looked to her without even realizing it. Her throat closed. This wasn't supposed to be hers. She hadn't wanted it. Command was weight that crushed. Command was responsibility that carved scars into people who already carried too many. But no one else was stepping forward. She pulled her rifle tight to her chest, forced her voice to rise above the storm. "South wall, we break through before they close it." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Disbelief, hesitation, fear. Then Thompson barked out, hoarse but firm, "You heard her, move." And suddenly they obeyed. They sprinted toward the south wall, rifles clutched, boots pounding against dirt. Bullets bit at the air, snapping past their ears, slamming into stone. She ran at the front, lungs burning, heart screaming, every nerve alive with the terror of being wrong. At the wall they set charges, hands trembling as they worked. Ramirez fumbled, nearly dropping the detonator. She grabbed his wrist, steadied it. Their eyes met for a second, his wide, hers sharp. "Breathe," she told him. He nodded, gulped air, forced the charge into place. The explosion ripped through the compound, shattering stone, smoke curling into the night. The wall crumbled, opening a jagged wound in their prison. "Go," she shouted. They poured through, one after another, into the dark. The world outside was no safer, but it wasn't the cage the compound had become. She kept moving, refusing to look back, refusing to count who had made it and who hadn't. Counting meant breaking. They ran until their lungs gave out, until the ridge was nothing but a jagged shadow behind them. Finally, in the hollow of a dry riverbed, they collapsed. Weapons clutched, chests heaving, silence pressing heavy again. No one spoke for a long time. Then Ramirez broke it, voice ragged. If we'd stayed. She cut him off softly. We'd be dead. The men stared at her, eyes reflecting something new. Not doubt, not disbelief, something heavier, trust. It terrified her more than the bullets had. Because trust meant responsibility. And responsibility meant one thing. If she failed, she wouldn't just lose herself. She'd lose them all. She pressed her palms against the earth, grounding herself. The dirt was cold, real. She needed real. Because ahead of them stretched only unknowns, enemies they couldn't see, orders they couldn't trust, and a future that was shrinking with every lie broadcast across that cursed radio. She lifted her head. The stars burned above, indifferent. "We're not done," she whispered, mostly to herself. But Ramirez heard. "Then what now?" She didn't answer, not yet. Because there was something she hadn't told them, something she hadn't admitted to anyone. The voice on the radio, it wasn't just wrong. It was familiar. Why did the voice sound like him? She sat in the hollow of the riverbed, dirt pressed against her palms, heartbeat still stumbling from the sprint, and that single truth kept circling in her head. She hadn't said it aloud. Not yet. If she did, if the words left her mouth, they'd reshape everything. The mission, the men, even herself. Because admitting it meant opening a wound she had buried deep. Ramirez sat near her, trying to steady his breathing. He cradled his rifle like it was something fragile, not steel and powder. His lips moved in silent prayer again, eyes darting to the shadows beyond the riverbed. He was too young for the lines of fear carved into his face, but war didn't wait for age. The commander crouched nearby, head bent over a map he couldn't trust, lips moving as if calculation alone could wrestle control back from chaos. He hadn't looked at her since the wall blew. Maybe he knew that in the moment he hesitated, she had acted. Maybe that stung more than the fact she had been right. The others sat scattered, some staring blankly into the dark, others muttering to themselves. Thompson lit a cigarette with trembling hands, the smoke curling into the cold night air like a confession. She wanted to close her eyes, to shut them all out, to shut it out. But closing her eyes meant hearing the voice again. And hearing the voice meant remembering. Her brother's voice. It wasn't exact. The timbre was different, rougher, like gravel dragged across concrete. But the rhythm, the cadence, the way words stretched just slightly longer than they needed to, the way silence filled the cracks between phrases, it was close enough to rattle her bones. She pressed her hand hard against the scar on her forearm, grounding herself in pain. She earned that scar the night of his convoy, the night she couldn't save him. But what if the lie wasn't just tactical? What if it was personal? A branch snapped somewhere beyond the riverbed. The men tensed instantly, rifles raised, breath caught in their throats. She froze too, listening. Silence pressed in, heavy, thick. Nothing followed. Ramirez's whisper trembled in the dark. "They're hunting us." She wanted to tell him not to whisper, that whispers carried like screams in silence. But she didn't, because his words were true. The commander finally lifted his head, his eyes cutting across the group. "We can't stay here. They'll track us easy. We move west toward the hills, more cover." No one argued. They rose, weary but obedient, the unspoken fear of stillness stronger than the fear of moving. She brought up the rear as they climbed out of the riverbed, each step slow, deliberate, boots crunching against loose stone. Her ears strained for sound, the click of a safety, the slide of a boot, the hiss of a radio tuning in. And then, as if summoned by thought, the radio in the commander's pack crackled. The voice slithered out, smooth and commanding. "Unit, reposition to coordinates 46. Immediate extraction. Secure your wounded." The commander slowed, tempted. She saw it in his posture, the brief straightening of his spine, the slight lift of his chin. Orders carried gravity, even when they were false. She stepped close, her voice sharp. "Shut it off." He turned, eyes narrowing. That could be real. Her chest tightened. "It's not, you know it's not." The men slowed, listening, waiting. For a heartbeat, it felt like a knife-edge decision, whether to follow the illusion of safety or the jagged edge of her instincts. The commander's hand hovered over the radio. Then, with a snap, he twisted the dial and killed it. The silence that followed was almost violent. She breathed out, slow, relief and terror mixed, because every time the voice spoke it came closer, not just in range, in recognition. She wanted to scream it at them, that she knew that rhythm, that she'd heard it before, but admitting it meant unraveling something she wasn't ready to face. Not yet. They moved on westward, the night wrapping around them like a predator. Every mile felt stolen, every breath borrowed. The hills rose slowly ahead, jagged silhouettes against a star-stitched sky. When they finally stopped, exhaustion pulled the men to the ground. They formed a rough circle, weapons outward, eyes scanning the dark. Ramirez sat close to her again, shoulders trembling from cold or fear, she couldn't tell which. He looked at her suddenly, voice low. "Why do you know before anyone else? How do you always know?" The question cut deeper than he meant it to. She stared at him, her lips parting, but no words came. The truth clawed inside her chest, desperate for release, because instincts weren't magic. They weren't guesses. They were echoes of what she had lost. Finally she found her voice. "Because I've heard lies before, and I didn't listen soon enough." He studied her, confusion clouding his features, but he didn't press. Maybe he saw in her eyes that some truths were too heavy to force. Thompson exhaled smoke, his gaze fixed on the stars. His voice rasped. "When I was home last, my kid asked me why I keep coming back here. I told her it's so she can keep sleeping in her own bed safe. But some nights, I wonder if it's just because I don't know how to stop." The men went quiet. The confession lingered, raw, human. She swallowed hard. She understood it too well. The not knowing how to stop. The fear that stopping meant finally facing what you had been running from. The night stretched on, heavy with unspoken thoughts. And then another sound. Not the radio this time, not gunfire. A whistle. Soft, low, almost gentle. Her blood froze. It wasn't random, it wasn't wind through stone, it was deliberate. A pattern, a tune. Her chest seized, her lungs locking, because she knew that whistle. She'd heard it in childhood, drifting from a bedroom down the hall, her brother humming it while pretending not to be afraid of the dark. It wasn't possible. Ramirez noticed her face pale. "What is it?" he whispered. She couldn't answer, not yet. Because if she spoke it, if she admitted what her instincts screamed, then the battlefield wasn't just a mission anymore. It was personal. And the man hunting them wasn't just an enemy. It was someone who once called her family. The whistle did not stop. It floated through the darkness like a thread pulled taut across time, winding between the rocks, slipping beneath the skin. Each note lingered just long enough to ache. Not random, not chance, a call. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Every instinct screamed for silence, for stillness. But her body betrayed her, muscles tightening, jaw clenching, breath quickening. Her memories rose unbidden, one after another, sharp as glass. Her brother sitting on the porch, feet bare, whistling that tune while cleaning his boots. Her brother crouched in the barn, the same whistle curling through the dust as they played cards by lantern light. Her brother on deployment, tired but smiling, sending a letter home with a line scrawled at the bottom. "Still whistling, so you'll know it's me when I come back." But he never came back. He died in fire and steel, convoy torn apart on a road she could still see when she closed her eyes. The report said there was nothing left to bury. And yet here it was, his tune, his rhythm, played in a war zone where nothing survived without purpose. She pressed her hand hard to her scar, nails digging into the raised flesh. She wanted to scream, to run toward the sound, to tear the truth from the night, no matter how ugly. But the men had heard it too. Ramirez's eyes darted to hers, wide with unease. That's no bird, No signal, I know. Thompson flicked ash from his cigarette, his voice gravel-thick. Enemy taunt, maybe, trying to draw us out. The commander raised a hand, silencing them. His jaw flexed, his stare cutting through the dark. But when he spoke, his voice was low, almost hesitant. Whoever it is, they know we're here. The men shifted uneasily, rifles drawn tighter. Every shadow seemed to breathe now, every rock to shift. She could barely hear them, her ears strained only for the whistle. And then silence. The tune ended mid-phrase, cut off clean. The quiet that followed was worse, like a cliff edge beneath her feet. Her lungs finally dragged in air, ragged, uneven. The commander crouched, motioning the group closer. We can't sit here. If they know where we are, they'll close in. We move deeper into the hills, now. The men obeyed, though their movements were sharp with unease, heads snapping at every sound. She followed, but her steps were heavy, because the hills weren't just ground, they were memories. She remembered her brother leading her up hills like these back home, showing her how to read the land, how to find the safest path when the world wanted to trip you. Her throat burned. As they climbed, the night pressed closer. Rocks shifted beneath boots, dust whispering down slopes. Every breath felt too loud. Halfway up the ridge, the radio hissed. The voice returned. Unit extraction delayed. Hold position until further orders. Casualty support inbound. Do not proceed further into hostile terrain. The commander froze, shoulders tensing. The men stopped behind him, caught in the gravity of the words. She couldn't help it. The sound of that cadence, it wasn't just familiar, it was intimate. Her chest tightened, her stomach turning. That same drawl between syllables, that same pause before a command, like he was weighing it against something heavier than words. She couldn't breathe. Ramirez whispered, "Sir, maybe we should." No, her voice snapped like a whip, cutting through the night. The men turned, startled. Her breath came hard, but her eyes locked on the commander. "It's not real, don't listen." His jaw worked, caught between authority and doubt. "You can't know that." Her throat burned. The words trembled, clawing to be free. "I know because I know him." The silence that followed was suffocating. The men looked at her, confusion clouding their fear. Ramirez frowned. "Him who?" She swallowed hard, forcing air into her lungs, forcing the truth past her lips. "My brother, that voice, it's his." The words hung in the air like shrapnel. The commander's eyes narrowed. "Your brother's dead." She flinched as if struck. "Yes," she whispered. He is. I buried him 100 times in my head, but I know that voice, I know that whistle. I would stake my life on it." The men shifted uneasily. Thompson muttered under his breath, "This is madness." Ramirez's voice cracked. "You're saying the one hunting us is your brother." Her chest ached, the weight of it crushing. "I don't know, I don't want to know, but it's him, or it's someone who knows him so well they can wear his skin." The commander's face hardened. "You're compromised." The words cut deeper than any blade. "No," she snapped, anger igniting through grief. "I'm the only one seeing this clearly. They're not just enemies, they're inside our heads. They're using our dead, our lost, to break us. If you follow that voice, you'll march us into a grave." The men looked between them, torn. Fear made followers of them all, but trust was fracturing. The commander stepped closer, his voice low, sharp. "Then you'd better prove it, because if you're wrong, you doom us." Her hands shook, but she met his stare. "And if I'm right, if that voice is him, then what does that mean for all of us?" Silence, heavy, crushing. The commander turned, cutting the moment with action. "We keep moving, West Ridge, no stops." The group obeyed, tension thick as smoke. But she lingered for a heartbeat, eyes cast back into the dark, toward the echo of a whistle that wasn't supposed to exist. Her brother, alive, turned, a ghost stitched into enemy lies. She didn't know. But she knew this. The battlefield had shifted. This wasn't just survival anymore. It was reckoning. What breaks first on a battlefield? Not the body, not the gun, not even the ground beneath your boots. It's trust. And by the time dawn bled into the hills, trust was gone. The soldiers moved like shadows, eyes darting to every ridge, every gap, every sound that scraped against silence. But they also glanced at her now, sideways, sharp, suspicious, not with the camaraderie of shared danger, with the question no one spoke aloud. Is she one of us or one of them? Her throat ached with words she couldn't give them. Explanations, memories, proof, but none of that mattered here. In the desert, only the next step mattered, and every step they took dragged them deeper into terrain that seemed to shift under their very weight. The commander stayed silent, his face carved in stone, but she could see it in the way his shoulders coiled tighter with every mile. He didn't trust her. He didn't trust the hills. He didn't trust the plan. Ramirez lagged behind, muttering prayers into the dust. Thompson walked with his cigarette unlit, lips chewing the filter to shreds. Every man was unraveling, and the radio hissed on his back like a serpent, ready to strike. By mid-morning the sun was cruel. Heat shimmered off the rocks, pressing down on them like judgment. Sweat ran into her scar, stinging, blinding. And then it came again. That voice. Unit coordinates updated. You are off course. Adjust bearing north. Immediate danger ahead. Casualty extraction en route. The men froze, glances snapping to the commander. He lifted the radio, hand trembling, though he hid it well. His thumb hovered over the transmit. She stepped forward. Don't. His eyes cut to her. You don't command here. Her voice cracked, but it held. If you answer, we're finished. They're not guiding us out, they're guiding us in. The men muttered, restless, caught between hunger for rescue and terror of deceit. Ramirez whispered, Sir, what if she's right? Thompson spat the shredded cigarette. And what if she's wrong? You willing to die out here because of her ghost stories? The commander's jaw flexed, silence stretched, sweat dripped down her spine. And then softly, impossibly, the radio spoke again. Not a command, not coordinates. Her name. Not her call sign, not her rank. Her name, spoken in the voice that should have been buried years ago. Every muscle in her body turned to stone. Her heart seized, choking her breath. Ramirez flinched, eyes wide. Thompson swore under his breath. The commander froze, his mask cracked by shock. Her brother's voice, tender as it once was, drifted through static. I see you. I know you. Come home. Her knees almost buckled. Memories slammed into her, his laugh, his arms slung around her shoulders, the way he'd look back when they hiked, whistling for her to catch up. But layered beneath, darker than grief, a question. Was it really him? The commander ripped the radio free, fury sharpening his voice. Who are you? Identify yourself. Silence. Then the whistle. That same tune, slow, curling through the static like smoke. The commander hurled the radio into the dust. It cracked, hissed, died. The men stood frozen, faces pale, silence heavier than gunfire. Finally, Thompson's voice split the stillness. We're being hunted. Ramirez whispered, by what? No one answered. They moved again, though now every step felt like walking on glass. No one spoke. No one trusted. But inside her chest, war raged. If it was him, if somehow her brother lived, reshaped into something else, could she kill him? Could she even face him? And if it wasn't him, then someone had learned his voice, learned her past, learned her, which meant she wasn't just another soldier in their eyes. She was the weak point, the doorway in. By dusk, exhaustion dragged them low. They found cover beneath a jagged ridge, shadows stretching like claws across the sand. The commander ordered a halt, but no one rested. Ramirez's hands shook as he reloaded his rifle, whispering fragments of home. Thompson kept packing, chewing at his nails. Even the commander's hands flexed open and closed, betraying nerves he'd never admit. She sat apart, staring at the horizon, her scar throbbing. She pressed her fingers into it, grounding herself. And then soft, so soft she almost thought it was her mind, came the whistle. Not from the radio, from the ridge above. Her head snapped up. The men heard it too, rifles lifted, breath sucked in. The commander raised a fist, signaling silence. They froze, statues in shadow. The whistle drifted down, winding through rocks, curling around them like a snare. Thompson's voice shook. "That's close, too close." Ramirez's whisper broke. "Sir, what if it's not human?" The commander ignored him, eyes locked upward, finger tight on his trigger. She rose slowly, heart hammering. The tune twisted her insides, pulling her like a string. Her brother's lullaby, the one he whistled when she couldn't sleep. The commander's hand shot out, gripping her arm. "Don't." Her breath caught. "If it's him." His voice cut like steel. "If it's him, he's not yours anymore." The words slammed into her chest, cruel, unflinching. Her mouth trembled. She wanted to scream, to fight, to demand he take them back, but she couldn't, because maybe he was right. Silence again, the whistle stopped. And then gunfire. Sharp, sudden, echoing through the ridge above. Bullets tore the rock near their heads, spraying dust. The men dove, shouting, firing upward blindly. She hit the dirt, chest heaving, rifle tight against her shoulder. The ridge flashed with muzzle fire, 1, 2, maybe 3 shooters. Shadows against shadows. The commander roared commands, his voice drowned by chaos. Thompson screamed curses, Ramirez cried out, firing wildly. Her heart pounded, but her training locked in. She scanned, focused, measured. And then she saw it. A figure, silhouetted against the last light of dusk. Broad shoulders, familiar stance, rifle raised. Her breath stopped. Even through the haze of distance and smoke, her chest knew before her mind could. It was him. Or it looked like him. She froze, finger hovering on her trigger. Her brother, alive, aimed at her. The world seemed to fall silent, even with bullets tearing the sky. Her ears rang, her vision tunneled. Her heart whispered one word, "Why?" His rifle barked. The shot slammed into the rock inches from her face. And in the split-second flash of muzzle fire, she saw his eyes. Cold, unrecognizing. Not her brother. Not anymore. Her scream caught in her throat. She lifted her rifle, chest breaking. The commander shouted, "Take him down." Her finger curled against the trigger. But her heart begged, "Don't." The man above ducked, vanishing into shadow. Gunfire ceased as suddenly as it had begun. The ridge fell silent again. Only her breath, ragged, shaking. The men cursed, muttered, panicked. The commander's face was iron, but his eyes flicked to her, searching, questioning. She couldn't speak, couldn't explain. Because she didn't know. Was that her brother, twisted, turned, stolen by enemies who knew how to carve souls as weapons? Or was it a mask, a ghost, a lie made flesh? She didn't know. But one truth burned in her chest, hotter than fear, heavier than grief. Whatever it was, it wanted her. What do you do when the dead return, not as ghosts but as enemies? That question hunted her with every step as they pushed through the night. No one spoke of what they had seen on the ridge. Not the commander, not Ramirez, not Thompson. The silence was heavier than their rifles, heavier than the desert heat clinging to their skin. But every glance they threw at her said enough. It was him, she saw him, she hesitated. Her hesitation had almost killed them. Her throat ached with the weight of it. She wanted to tell them what she saw in those eyes, how they weren't her brother anymore. How the warmth, the recognition had been carved out and replaced with something cold, manufactured. But words felt useless. If she admitted he was her brother, they'd see her as broken. If she denied it, she'd be lying to herself. So she said nothing. The commander drove them forward, jaw set, eyes hard. His silence was command enough. Ramirez dragged his feet, whispering prayers between breaths. Thompson muttered curses like a mantra, fury masking fear. Every shadow on the ridge seemed alive now. Every gust of wind carried that whistle she couldn't tell was real or just memory. By dawn, their strength was splintering. Their canteens were near empty, their steps uneven. The hills rose around them like teeth, enclosing them, funneling them into places where escape narrowed. And then came the shot. A single round, crisp, precise. It struck the dirt at Ramirez's feet, spraying dust. He screamed, stumbling back. The others dropped low, rifles up, eyes scanning the ridges. But no follow-up came. Only silence. And then the whistle. Her heart slammed. It drifted down from the ridge ahead, soft, taunting, the same lullaby. Ramirez whispered, panicked, "He's playing with us." Thompson spat into the dirt. "No, he's hunting us." The commander's voice was a growl. "Move into cover." They scrambled into a narrow cut in the ridge, stone walls rising high on either side, a corridor of rock that offered shade but no escape. A killing ground. Her stomach dropped. "This is wrong," she whispered. The commander snapped, "You think you know better than me." Her voice cracked, "He wants us here." The echo of her words had barely faded before gunfire erupted. Bullets ripped down into the corridor from above, sparks burst from rock, shouts filled the air. Thompson fired upward, screaming curses. Ramirez hugged the wall, trembling. The commander roared orders, but his voice was drowned by the chaos. She dropped, pressing into stone, heart pounding, dust choking her lungs. And then, impossibly, a figure dropped down from the ridge. He landed in the corridor with the grace of someone trained to kill. Dust rose around him, his rifle aimed steady. The men froze. Her breath caught. It was him. Close now, close enough that there was no denying it. Her brother. The face she thought burned away, the eyes she thought lost forever, the scar on his jaw she remembered from the fight he got into at 17. But the eyes, cold, empty. Not hers anymore. Thompson shouted, lifting his weapon. The man moved like lightning, his shot striking Thompson's chest. The soldier hit the dirt, choking, gasping, blood blooming in the dust. Ramirez screamed. The commander fired. The man slipped between their shots like shadow. And then his eyes locked on her. Her rifle lifted, her hands shook, her breath came in ragged gasps. He didn't fire. He just stared. And then he spoke. Soft, calm, too calm. "Sister." Her chest shattered. The commander's voice tore through the air. "Take the shot." She couldn't. Her vision blurred, her lungs seized. He stepped closer, lowering his weapon, eyes locked on hers. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. Her throat tightened. "You're dead." A flicker of something, not warmth, but recognition, moved in his gaze. "They told you that." The commander roared again, "Shoot him." She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her brother's voice was steady. "Come with me, leave them, you don't belong with them." Her grip on the rifle shook violently. Ramirez shouted prayers, firing wildly. The bullets sparked off stone. Her brother didn't flinch. The commander cursed, grabbing her shoulder. "Do it." Her voice cracked like glass. "Why are you here? Why this?" Her brother's face was unreadable. "Because they made me see the truth. The war isn't what you think it is. The ones you trust, they lie, just like they lied about me." Her heart screamed inside her chest. The commander raised his weapon. Her brother's eyes narrowed. If he fires, he dies. The air was so thick with tension, she thought it would choke her. She had to choose. The rifle was heavy in her hands, her arms shook, her soul shook. Family or duty? Her brother or her team? Her scar burned, her memories burned. She wanted to scream, to beg the world to stop twisting like this, to give her one straight answer. Instead, silence crushed her. And then movement. Her brother lunged, slamming into the commander. The rifle clattered to the dirt. Gunfire exploded in the corridor. Ramirez screamed. The commander shouted, fists flying. And she froze. Because the man pinning the commander wasn't just her brother. It was the shadow of everything she lost. And now it wanted her too. How much weight can a scar carry before it breaks the skin all over again? That was the thought tearing through her as dust choked the corridor, gunfire echoing against stone, and the shape of her brother fought like a storm in human form. The commander grappled with him, fists pounding, grunts ripping the air. Ramirez fired blindly into the dust, shouting prayers between sobs. Thompson lay still in the dirt, chest unmoving, blood spreading into the sand. And she stood frozen, rifle heavy in her hands, heart heavier in her chest. Her brother's eyes locked on hers even as he fought, even as he drove the commander down into the dust with impossible strength. Not hate in those eyes, not warmth either. Something stranger. Possession. You were never meant to stay with them, he shouted over the chaos. You know it, I know it, you belong with me. The commander snarled, blood streaking his face. He's gone, he's not your brother anymore. Her chest cracked at the words. She raised her rifle, aimed, hands trembling. Her brother's gaze softened for just a breath. I never left you. Time shattered. She remembered the night they were kids, fireflies in a jar between them, him whispering promises that he'd always protect her. She remembered the knock on the door years later, the folded flag, the weight that never left her chest. She remembered the way she swore she'd never let anyone use her heart as a weapon again. And yet here she was. Her hands shook harder. The commander roared, "Do it, end this." Her brother's eyes didn't flinch. If you pull that trigger, you kill the only truth you ever had. The words cut deeper than any bullet. Her scar burned, her lungs burned, her very soul burned. Ramirez screamed as bullets ricocheted overhead. The commander fought to break free. Dust blinded her, ears ringing. And then stillness. Her brother pressed the commander's rifle to his throat, pinning him to the dirt. Choose, he whispered. Her knees weakened. If she shot him, she lost her brother forever. If she didn't, she lost them all. Silence swallowed her. And in that silence she heard it. Not the whistle, not the radio. Her own heartbeat. Slow, steady, true. Her brother wasn't whistling now, because it wasn't him, not anymore. Her finger curled. The shot cracked. Her brother's body jerked, his eyes widened just for a breath. Not anger, not betrayal. Almost relief. He collapsed into the dust still. The corridor fell silent, except for Ramirez's broken sobs and the commander's ragged breaths. Her rifle lowered, trembling in her grip. Her chest hollowed, a void swallowing her whole. She knelt beside the body. Her hands hovered, shaking, afraid to touch, afraid the skin beneath her fingers would vanish. But it didn't. It was warm, real, solid. And so was the scar on his jaw, the scar she knew better than her own. Her throat tore as she whispered, "I'm sorry." The commander's voice was hard but softer than before. You did what had to be done. Her eyes burned. No, I did what I swore I never would. I killed what was left of home. Ramirez's sobs echoed off stone, carrying every grief that words couldn't. The sun broke over the ridge then, spilling light into the killing ground. The dusk glowed in golden shafts, settling over blood and silence. She rose, rifle hanging loose at her side. Her scar throbbed, but she no longer pressed her hand to it. Let it burn. Let it remind her. The commander's eyes met hers. For once no judgment, only weight, the same weight she carried. Ramirez staggered forward, clutching at faith, at air, at anything. What if he really was him? Her lips parted, but no words came. Because she didn't know. The radio crackled weakly in the dirt, half broken but alive. A voice hissed through static. Unit confirmed status, extraction inbound, casualty count. The commander bent, lifting it, his thumb hovered. She stepped forward, hand stopping him. Her eyes met his, steady now, scar burning like a brand. No. His brow furrowed. What do you mean? Her gaze drifted to the body in the dust, to the face she loved and lost twice in one life, to the silence that weighed heavier than orders. They lied once, she whispered. I won't let them write the truth again. The commander studied her, then slowly released the radio. It fell into the dust, silent. For a long time, none of them spoke. The sun rose higher, painting the blood on stone in colors too vivid to bear. At last she turned, shoulders heavy but unbowed. Her voice was low, almost breaking, yet steady enough to carry. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. She walked ahead, each step carving into silence. The men followed, but the sound of their boots seemed small compared to the absence behind them. The absence of a brother, of a truth that would never be untangled. The desert held its silence, and she carried hers. Forever.